and fog patches. Once any mist and fog does lift, it's actually looking like a pretty fine day for many of us tomorrow, probably the driest day of the week for most, with a good deal of dry, sunny weather around, albeit there will be some cloud here and there, and the cloud is going to thicken from the southwest as we go later on. With the sunny spells, most of us will see it should feel relatively warm at times, albeit temperatures are near normal for the time of year. Heavy rain and strong winds push in from the southwest later tomorrow. They feed their way across many southern parts as we go into Thursday. We're looking at the potential for gusts in excess of 70 miles per hour around some eastern parts, and rainfall totals in the south up to 50 millimetres. So some disruption quite likely because of that low pressure that's pushing its way in. Friday's looking showery, Saturday's drier but colder. See you later.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
You believe the things about Jesus and
yes.
the kingdom of God? Can I baptise you in the name of the Lord Jesus?
Yes, I do.
It's been revealed that asylum seekers living in hotels are being baptised in bathtubs by members of a Christian sect charity. As many migrants have been granted asylum under the ECHR after legally converting to Christianity, is this the latest example of Britain's generosity being exploited? Also tonight, to legalise or not to legalise, Economist magazine has backed the legalisation of cocaine, arguing that the licit and regulated distribution of the Class A drug would boost safety and quash underground drug gangs. But rather than abolishing the law, is it time the police enforced it? I'll be speaking to Peter Hitchens shortly. Plus,
Let's dig it. I thought you said your dog did not bite.
That is not my dog.
Today is Trafalgar Day, marking 220 years since Vice Admiral Nelson's naval victory over French and Spanish fleets and defeating Napoleon's plans to invade Britain. Today is a day not just to rejoice in being British, but also to celebrate not being French. And, as Baroness Thatcher once said, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. New HMRC data shows the top 1% now pay a third of all UK income and capital gains tax. But with high earners leaving, is Britain's tax system in dire need of reform? State of the Nation starts now. Also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. As always, I want to know your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much. We start with some breaking news this hour that a fourth survivor has quit the panel for the government's grooming gangs inquiry. GB News can exclusively reveal. Jessica, not her real name, from West Yorkshire, quit the panel tonight. She said she was stunned to learn that the two prospective chairs were a former police officer and social worker, Jim Gamble and Annie Hudson. The survivor was one of several members of the panel blocked from attending the meeting with the prospective chairs. In the end, Annie Hudson quit ahead of any interview, citing media pressure. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips has insisted that the terms of reference would be focused on grooming gangs. Well, the Home Office has said the following in a statement today. The abuse of children by grooming gangs is one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Any suggestion that this inquiry is being watered down is completely wrong. We are committed to delivering a robust, thorough inquiry that will get to the truth and provide the answers that survivors have so long campaigned for. We are working urgently to appoint the best chair to take forward this work and deliver justice, putting victims and survivors at the heart of the process. Elsewhere, the ghostwriter of Virginia Giuffre's memoir Nobody's Girl has called on Prince Andrew to tell US police everything he knows about Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. Amy Wallace says the Duke of York needs to speak about his own moral compass, claiming his silence continues to hurt victims. Lawyer Gloria Allred, who represents several of Epstein's victims, echoed the call, urging Andrew to cooperate with investigators about what he may have witnessed at Epstein's Manhattan home. Prince Andrew continues to deny all wrongdoing. Donald Trump says if Hamas don't do the right thing, their end will be fast, furious and brutal. The US president issued the warning on his Truth Social account. His 20-point ceasefire plan calls for Gaza to disarm and for steps towards a Palestinian state, demands both sides have yet to fully accept. It comes as US Vice President J.D. Vance, who's in Israel, says there will be no boots on the ground in Gaza as he pushes to stabilise the fragile Gaza ceasefire. Mr. Vance also said these ceasefires are in a very good place despite violence in the Strip over the weekend. Meanwhile, Britain has sent a senior commander and a small number of troops to Israel to help international efforts to monitor the Gaza ceasefire following an American request. And there are no plans for US President Donald Trump to meet Russia's Vladimir Putin in the immediate future. That's according to a White House official. Last Thursday, Mr. Trump said he and the Russian president would hold talks in Budapest within 2 weeks to discuss the war in Ukraine. A meeting between US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov was due to be held this week, but the White House said the two had had a productive phone call and that a meeting was no longer necessary. The White House did not share any more detail on why the talks had been put on hold. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Britain is again being taken advantage of and our asylum system is failing. Illegal migrants are reportedly being baptised in asylum hotel bathtubs by a small Christian charity. The ceremony is carried out by Carelinks Ministries, a group linked to the Christadelphian sect are happening inside taxpayer-funded accommodation. Carelink says it converted around 260 individuals across 30 countries last year, including several asylum seekers. Since 2019, 6 upper-tier immigration tribunal cases in the UK have involved asylum claims from Christadelphian converts. 4 were rejected, while 2 were successful. However, because lower-tier tribunal decisions are not made public, an outrage in itself, the true number of these claims could be much higher. After these so-called baptisms, some asylum seekers have won the right to stay in Britain, claiming that as Christians, they would face persecution if sent home. Even the Church of England's guidance from January 2025 advises the clergy to be wary of mixed motives from asylum seekers and warns that some may attempt to use conversion to strengthen their cause to remain. In 2019, an Iranian convert was granted asylum after a judge ruled that he faced a well-founded fear of persecution if returned to Iran. In 2020, a second Iranian man's attempt at-home baptism was deemed insincere, with the tribunal arguing that Carelinks was not a genuine church. In 2021, another Iranian's claim was initially rejected for pretending to convert, but was overturned in 2022 after baptism, with the judge ruling he would face serious ill treatment if returned. Later, a Kurdish Iraqi convert was denied asylum owing to significant doubts about the sincerity of his conversion, while another Iranian man's claim was rejected because he could not explain what Jesus meant to him. Tunisian asylum seeker was found to have fabricated a baptism certificate. Another Kurdish Iraqi was granted asylum, even though he reportedly knew almost nothing about Christianity. Abdul Azidi, the asylum seeker who, after his baptism conversion ceremony was allowed to remain in Britain, went on to attack a woman and 2 children with acid in Clapham last year. Cases such as these illustrate the extent to which advantage could be being taken of Britons of our good nature. A system meant to protect the genuinely vulnerable is being played as it encourages people to adopt behaviours that make it more likely that they could be harmed if returned to their own countries. Thus they claim to be Christian or to be homosexuals, in the hope that this will prevent them from being sent home. These bogus baptisms are part of a wider problem, merely the latest example of Britain being gulled. We cannot allow this to continue. We must leave the lunatic ECHR and stop allowing foreign criminals to exploit our country. As always, let me know what you think. mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm now particularly pleased to be joined by the researcher at the Christian think tank Theos, George Lapshinov. George, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me, sir.
Now, the first question for Christians is that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of faith. So if you've converted to Christianity, don't you want to go back home to win converts? Isn't that the sign of your sincerity?
Well, yes, I suppose that has been, the Great Commission has been since the first days of Christianity a cornerstone of the faith, otherwise it would have ended there and then in 33 AD. However, many asylum seekers come from countries where being Christian would mean an immediate death sentence. In those cases, going back home would not lead probably to many conversions, if any, and would most certainly result in their death or the end of their freedom.
But in a funny sort of way, if you convert to Christianity, you have to take up your cross and follow Christ. And that's why the early martyrs accepted what became of them. And they were all given the chance to, or almost all given the chance to avoid execution and martyrdom if they would renounce Christ. And therefore, axiomatically, if you convert to Christianity and then say, I can't go home, you haven't really converted.
Well, I would like to flip the table around, because for most of the world, the global south especially, it is the UK now that is considered a ground for evangelism, because, well, the UK has now, as we all know since the 2021 census, a minority of Christians, less than half the population, is affiliated with a Christian church, and an even much smaller number actually go to church frequently.
No, I agree with that. We certainly need more evangelization in this country. But if we move on from the question of martyrdom, and I accept that not everybody everybody is made of the stuff of martyrs. Frankly, I'm probably not, actually, so I'm not going to pretend that I am. We saw a brief clip of a baptism that was taking place, which didn't actually seem to be a proper baptism, being baptised in a bath in the name of Jesus, not in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, does seem to be a baptism of convenience rather than the real sacramental baptism.
Yes, well, according certainly to my understanding of Christianity and my own Trinitarian faith, I would not find that those Christadelphian baptisms are in fact baptisms at all. However, to that particular sect, that is how they do these baptisms. If you want to join that sect, from their perspective, this is a valid entry.
Is it? Because aren't you justified as a state to say, look, the Church of England is the church established by law, Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church. These are all proper and serious organisations, and they will not baptise people who haven't really converted and don't understand the faith. Yes. These Christian Delphians are a very rum lot, aren't they?
Well, I'm afraid I have never met any of them, which is probably a testament to the fact that there aren't very many around in this country, certainly. But yes, I think certainly from what I have seen on the ground, travelling across England, Scotland and Wales for most of last year, speaking with church leaders that specifically do ministry with asylum seekers and refugees, it seems evident that these, our national churches, if I can call them, the officially established church, but also the Roman Catholic, the Orthodox Methodist, Baptist and the many other churches, many of whom were originated in this country, have a very serious approach indeed. I have met church leaders that refused baptism to some very, very eager asylum seekers, specifically because they were not sure that they were genuine enough to be baptised.
I do just wonder why the churches are concentrating on converting illegal entrants to the country rather than the country at large. You point out the census is showing a decline in Christianity. Why aren't they out there converting people who are here perfectly legally, perhaps even people in prison, rather than this focus on asylum seekers who then find, oh my goodness, I've converted, and therefore it's easier to stay in this country? It does seem a little bit fishy, famous Christian symbol, of course.
Yes. Well, I suppose there is something to this, but churches are particularly focused, I suppose, on ministering to asylum seekers because they are, I suppose, the vulnerable of the vulnerable. If they come here, they are entirely reliant on charity, specifically on the charity of the British taxpayer, by living in state-sponsored accommodation and being fed at the cost of the taxpayer as well. And so for most Christian denominations in this country, those are the people who are in most need of that Christian kindness. Of course, it should not be one at the expense of the other. The churches of this country should, of course, seek to minister to everyone, and the Church of England certainly knows that every single British citizen living on the territory of England is part of a parish of the Church of England, and as such, Church of England has a duty towards every single person living in England at the very least.
Well, I think we certainly want everybody to convert, and ideally for England to go back to being Our Lady's Diary, but that may be a personal view of mine. Thank you, George, very much. A spokesman for CareLinks says CareLinks takes no part in the process of helping any individual to claim asylum. Applications for asylum are a private matter between the claimant and the state, and it's up to the claimant to show to the tribunal that their conversion to Christianity is genuine. A Home Office spokesman told GB News the UK has a proud history of welcoming those who are genuinely fleeing religious persecution. It's not quite true in the 16th century, but never mind. Religious conversions do not guarantee refugee status. All asylum applications are carefully considered on their individual merits. Anyway, it says thank you to George, not to my panel. My panel isn't in on this, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
To legalise or not to legalise, The Economist magazine has backed the legalisation of cocaine, but rather than abolishing the law, is it time the police enforced it? I'll be asking Peter Hitchens next.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
TfL are actually encouraging people to take their cats on the tube. Presumably, they want more people to travel on the tube, and they're saying let them relax on the floor during the trip. Bring some toys with them and so on. It does say to have them in a harness or on a leash, so they're not being completely irresponsible, if you like. And we've now got a response from the Cats Protection charity, who say it was shocking and warned that such travelling conditions would be hugely stressful for the animals.
Oh, for goodness sake, what is wrong with them? How are people supposed to get anywhere if you've got a pet, for example, that you're transporting? You have to have a car. Do you know what? My dog loves public transport so much that if a bus stops when I'm chatting to somebody and the door's open, on a couple of occasions he's just popped himself on a lead, and I have to, you know, luckily, thank goodness we still have drivers in vehicles, you know, they're not driverless vehicles, because, you know, they spot this dog and go, excuse me, mate, you haven't got a bus pass.
There's a famous dog from the past from Lewis who used to nip on a train and go around the southern region on a train and get back to Lewis in the evening, just on his own.
Yeah, because they're sociable creatures, aren't they? Lots of them like it. I think the issue with the TfL stuff is the fact they're showing these rucksacks, because they're a bit controversial, aren't they? Or the front sacks they've got there, where the cats are kind of inside.
Catastrophe.
Very good, Norman. I think that's what people take issue with. Although one of my friends has one of these cat rucksacks, and the cat absolutely loves it, always hopping in there.
You see, I think that's the...
I think it depends on the cat.
It does depend.
What about other animals? Can you take snakes on, for example?
No, thank you.
Snakes on a train. Love it. Oh, yeah. New film.
I think so. GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about migrant baptisms, and the male mogs have come in on a flood tide. Ben says, Christians are among the most persecuted group outside the West. I firmly believe we must offer them assistance where we can and should be doing more. The problem is, how can we distinguish between the genuine and the fraud? Francine says, it doesn't matter what religion they are have become, they should still be deported if they arrived illegally. And Noah says, dunking someone in a bath does not a Christian make. Please pass this on to immigration officials. Indeed, and it has to be in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, not just in the name of one part of the Trinity, to be a sacramental baptism. So, to legalise or not to legalise, that is the question. The in-house journal of the Blob, The Economist, has caused a stir after calling for the legalisation of cocaine, arguing that regulating rather than banning the Class A drug could cut crime, saves lives and undercut violent cartels. The magazine says legalisation would remove the profit motive for drug gangs, free up courts and make use safer. But with cocaine use rising and police charging fewer offenders, is it instead time to enforce the law, not erase it? Well, I'm joined now by the Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens. Peter, thank you for joining me. You have been a consistent opponent of changing the drug laws for decades. What makes you feel that so strongly, and what do you think the risks of taking cocaine are?
Well, the law has a moral content. By the way, before we go any further, may I wish you a happy Trafalgar Day, too often forgotten celebration in our national life. But to return to this dreary subject, the law has a moral content. All crimes caused by law
if we didn't have any objections to drug taking or robbery, which apparently our police now pretty much don't object to, or prostitution or large numbers of other things, we could stop having laws against them. We could stop having the dreary business of prosecuting them and sending people to prison for breaking these rules. And so what people are saying when they talk about decriminalising or legalising things is, let's no longer care about this. Now, I wouldn't claim an expertise in cocaine. I've always been much more interested in marijuana, which has been portrayed by skillful public relations for many years as a soft or non-drug, which is complete fantasy. It's a very dangerous and powerful drug with lasting effects on the human mind, which is associated with lifelong mental illness and worse. Cocaine, I think we all know, is bad for the body, and it certainly doesn't seem to be particularly good for the people in the long term. All kinds of things can happen. In the current series of Blue Lights, the sort of soap opera about Northern Ireland police, there's an episode of a woman having some sort of cocaine psychosis in which she does appalling things. In general, allowing yourself to be so intoxicated by a powerful drug that you're no longer in control of your mind cannot be a good thing. And the reason why there are laws against this is because this leads, in so many cases, both to personal tragedy for the drug taker and also for others. So the whole approach of The Economist is completely free of any kind of moral content.
All right, so accepting that, do you think there is anything in the idea that prohibition encouraged the mob in America whilst it existed, and that if you ban things, you make organised crime stronger? Or do you think that's just a lack of willpower of the police?
I think the use of the word prohibition is almost invariably employed by people who don't want there to be laws against drugs, because the whole attempt to ban alcohol in the United States was a built-in failure for so many reasons, not least because almost no effort was made to enforce it, and because the possession of alcohol was not made illegal, and therefore the fundamental tool of anybody who wants to stamp out the use of a drug was taken from the hands of the police and the federal authorities. And this has been one of the targets of drug legalizers in this country, that they've repeatedly pressed for the actual users and possessors of drugs to be left alone, and for the main sin to be the trafficking of them. Now, I've no doubt the trafficking of drugs is an extremely wicked act, profiting from human misery. But the people who finance these hideous cartels and everything that goes with them, all the violence and corruption and human disaster which follows, are the people in the capitals of Europe and the major cities of Europe and North America who spend their pounds and euros and dollars on buying these drugs. They're the ones who sustain it, and their action is fundamentally extremely wicked, both from the point of view of the damage they do to themselves and to their families, but also the damage they do to the world by financing this enormous empire of evil. So
and a lot of the people,
prohibition is perfectly effective if you try hard enough. In Japan and South Korea, drug possession is still pursued and prosecuted, and indeed also very, very fiercely frowned on in public life. If a public figure is caught in possession of marijuana in Japan, then that's pretty much the end of their career. So this was the case in this country. Actually, not all that long ago, but it ceased to be when the law stopped being enforced under the instructions, bizarrely, of the Lord Chancellor at the time, early 70s, Lord Hailsham. But it's perfectly possible to discourage strongly the use of drugs if you prosecute people for possessing them. And this is one thing we won't... You probably remember some... Yeah, sorry.
One of the things I want to get in, because I know you've concentrated on this a lot, is that people think that taking drugs is perfectly safe and that it doesn't do any harm and that it only harms them. What is the evidence that you've been coming across, and I know this applies to cannabis more than cocaine, that there is a real danger to society from cannabis use?
So do you mean from cocaine use?
From cannabis, because I know you've concentrated more on cannabis than cocaine, but you've done a lot of work on this, and I think it's important.
I think most of us would not want to have in our close family a cocaine user, but it has disastrous effects at the time of use. I'm not so sure about the cumulative use. And this is the problem with marijuana. It's increasingly associated, I can only say correlated, because no one has been interested enough, either in industry or government or academia, to do the actual research for causal relation. But the correlation between the use of marijuana and severe mental illness grows stronger every day. And the subcorrelation between the people who are mentally ill with marijuana and the commission of serious and violent crime is also very alarming. So if you have a family member who goes, I'm afraid, insane as a result of using marijuana, it's not a victimless crime. And if that family member then goes on to commit some hideous crime as a result of his mental illness, then that's not a victimless crime either. And this grows all the time. Given time, I could list for you enormous numbers of supposedly terrorist incidents where the perpetrator had been a long-term user of marijuana, and the events supposedly classified as terrorist are actually generally completely insane. So this is a major problem. There are also many, many other crimes which never make anything above the level of local newspapers, which are appallingly dangerous and which no one does anything about, and again linked with the drug. And my friend Ross Granger has written a book, Attacker Smoke Cannabis. He simply went to the files of local newspapers over some years and found over and over again appalling violent crimes linked with marijuana use.
Peter, thank you very much. We have to stop there, unfortunately, because later on we are going to be talking about Trafalgar Day, but I need to bring my panel in now on this subject. Michael, that's where Peter, I think, has such a strong argument that the consequences of drug use are not just that people may fry their brains a little, but they may then go on to do terrible things, and that therefore the Economist is wrong.
Yeah, I wouldn't legalise cocaine. On the other hand, I think if you were to take all the drugs that there are, we would probably decide, and apply our scientific knowledge right now, we would probably decide that actually the most dangerous is alcohol, because alcohol clearly does a lot of harm to the people who drink it in excess, and does a lot of harm in terms of violence, road accidents, accidents at work, and so on. I think, I mean, the argument that, OK, well, that would stop the gangs. Well, look at all these gangs that are smuggling cigarettes into so many of our high street shops these days and bypassing the tax laws and so on. Gangs will always find something to do, and if they're not selling drugs, they'll probably just do more of something else. I mean, they might, for instance, do more extortion and protection rackets. So you've got to be very, very careful about this. It is a very difficult issue.
Calvin, that's right, isn't it? That you won't get rid of...
Well, I would just say on the alcohol front, I gave up alcohol, right, about 5-7 years ago. And I'm just saying this not as trying to become the new vicar, but I'm just saying it's the best thing I've done. Right.
You become a much more moderate and mellow character since then.
Thanks I've given up the alcohol. But the other issue that I face... By the way, Peter Hitchin, what a fantastic advocate for his... Regardless of whether you believe it, a fantastic advocate for his argument. Brilliant guy when he looks like that as well. It's astonishing. Anyway, on the question of the cannabis, I live in a place called Weybridge. By the station, right, a small Surrey, quite prosperous town. By the station, there are youngsters there every day smoking heavily cannabis. Literally, you could become addicted by walking along it, right? You walk down St Martin's Lane in the centre of London, right? You would literally be killed by the amount of cannabis. On that basis, this is where I agree with Peter. If we have rules, we have laws, let us pursue them. Now, it may be a problem that we are now with cannabis where we are with shoplifting, right? That actually the police are saying there's too much of it going on and we can't cope with it. In that case, then we have to have a look at the law.
Isn't that right? That either it should be illegal or it should be legal. If it's illegal, the law should be enforced. But as far as one can tell, cannabis use is ignored by the police.
It is, but they don't ignore, well, or at least they ignore a lot less people illegally selling cannabis and drugs. And that doesn't seem to be an unreasonable compromise. I mean, we ought to remind viewers that your father was involved in the 1960s when he was editor of the Times as part of the campaign for saying that arresting Mick Jagger was an overuse of the law, for instance. And it's now become accepted that, you know, it's going too far. And we can't fill our prisons with drug users. Well, they're already full of drug users.
I mean, and drugs get into prison, and it wasn't quite my father's point, but that's
right.
programme.
Well, I do know, for instance, I know a guy who got 9 years for selling cocaine, OK? Part of a group. It was a guy of about 26, 27. He eventually ended up serving about 2.5 years and was actually allowed out at weekends to see the girlfriend or see the family. I think, so we have two things going on at the same time. When you see in the papers or not in the papers, but on the news side, you see that somebody got 13 years or got 9 years, you think, oh, they're really cracking down on that. Actually, that's not the case either. So not only are we not arresting enough people, we actually, when we come to jailing them, we aren't really jailing them at all for any length of time. So I sometimes look at our legal framework of our country, and I would wonder if you were a judge, whether you're looking at all this, whether you're cynicism, and actually you wonder, what the hell am I doing for a living now?
Well, that's a very good question to ask on another occasion. Thank you to my panel. In a moment.
Let's dig it. I thought you said your dog did not bite.
That is not my dog.
Today is Trafalgar Day, marking 220 years since Vice Admiral Nelson's naval victory over French and Spanish fleets and defeating Napoleon's plans to invade Britain. Today is a day not just to rejoice in being British, but also to be pleased not to be French.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Half term has already started for some of us, but I'm afraid there's not much holiday sun to go around. Parts of Greece will see heavy showers and thunderstorms. Also, many areas of northern Europe will continue to see unsettled weather, heavy showers, also some strong gusty winds, particularly around northern coasts of Spain and around coasts of France. Italy too will see some heavy showers, and Greece could see some quite intense thunderstorms with hail and gusty winds. These are set to continue as we head later into the week, with hopefully the return of some sunshine over the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's some wet and very windy weather to come later tomorrow and into Thursday, but for the time being, well, things are actually turning a little bit drier. We still have low pressure in control. It's just to the north of the UK, but it's somewhat easing, and so we're going to see a lot of the showery rain clearing away as we go through the rest of this evening, and most places turning largely dry. Not completely dry, there will still be a few showers coming into the northwest, but most places having a lot of clear weather because of the clear skies and the winds easing out as well. Temperatures dropping a bit lower than they have done through some recent nights. Towns and cities mid to high single figures quite widely, but some rural spots dipping close to perhaps even a little bit below freezing. So there could be a touch of frost first thing tomorrow morning, and also a few patches of mist and fog across southern parts of England and Wales, largely dry, just one or two coastal showers here and there. Similar story across northern parts of England. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, showers will be piling into western parts. Some of them could be a little bit on the heavy side. Meanwhile, towards the east, well, it is going to be drier, it's going to be clearer, and with that, a greater chance of a touch of frost and also some of those mist and fog patches. Once any mist and fog does lift, it's actually looking like a pretty fine day for many of us tomorrow, probably the driest day of the week for most, with a good deal of dry, sunny weather around, albeit there will be some cloud here and there, and the cloud is going to thicken from the southwest as we go later on. With the sunny spells, most of us will see it should feel relatively warm at times, albeit temperatures are near normal for the time of year. Heavy rain and strong winds push in from the southwest later tomorrow. They feed their way across many southern parts as we go into Thursday. We're looking at the potential for gusts in excess of 70 miles per hour around some eastern parts, and rainfall totals in the south up to 50 millimetres. So some disruption quite likely because of that low pressure that's pushing its way in. Friday's looking showery, Saturday's drier but colder. See you later.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Today is Trafalgar Day, celebrating 220 years since Vice Admiral Lord Nelson led the Royal Navy to victory over the combined French and Spanish fleets off Cape Trafalgar in 1805. The triumph ended Napoleon's ambitions, not Nelson's, to invade Britain and secured our naval supremacy for a century. Today also marks a new French milestone. Former President Nicolas Sarkozy has become the third French head of state to go to prison, following the footsteps of King Louis XVI and the collaborator Marshal Pétain, after Sarkozy, was found guilty of a court he accuses of being biased, of conspiring to fund his campaigns from Libya. So today is a day to remember courage, leadership and sacrifice, and to celebrate not just being British, but also, by the grace of God, not being French.
I was something of an athlete, you know. Yes, yes. I was known as the Pavlova of the parallels. Yes. Yes, it's all coming back now. Ah, yes, I remember. Well, that felt good.
It gets better, that scene, but let me go to my panel, Kelvin Mackenzie and Michael Crick. Trafalgar is very important because we have effectively 110 years of peace with British control of the high seas, whereas if Napoleon had won, we might have been invaded, and then Napoleon would have dominated the whole of Europe.
Well, do you know what? That's more your era than mine, to be honest, Jacob.
It is nearly the 18th century, isn't it?
I preferred your last line there, where by the grace of God, we're not French. And but I don't spend a lot of time worrying about Trafalgar Day. And what puzzles me is why you do. Is it something that you feel energised about?
Yeah, I think Trafalgar Day is a great day to celebrate. It's worth having national days of celebration, and our great days are what? They're actually all in relation to victories against the French. So they're Waterloo Day on the 18th of June, Trafalgar Day today, and then, of course, in a few days' time, we get Agincourt Day, which are our greatest.
Well, I didn't even know about these days. Well, I sort of vaguely heard of Trafalgar Day, but it seems to me if we're going to have a day, well, apparently we already do, actually, that it should be Battle of Britain Day, because the trouble is the Battle of Britain went on for 14 weeks or whatever, and therefore it's difficult to pick a day. But apparently most people say it's the 15th of September, although it ended about the end of October. But because the Battle of Britain, obviously, is much more recent, and without the Battle of Britain, all sorts of terrible things might have happened, including German invasion, and we might still be living under the Nazis.
But we'd never have got to win the Battle of Britain if we hadn't won the Battle of Trafalgar.
Well, you could say that.
That's why Trafalgar is more important.
Maybe you should
We don't have big celebrations.
No.
So I lived in New York for a while, and I was astonished at, for instance, their Irish Day, right? I mean, literally the whole, it doesn't matter whether you're Irish or not, this was a massive, and this will be true of Puerto Rico, it will be true of this, it will be true of that.
Poland has loads. When I lived there, it was, every other day was a national day of some kind.
Why don't we? So we don't, so London vaguely celebrates Scotland, and I say a big St Andrew's Day or something, but we don't have that. Do we actually have a sense actually, of what being English actually is anymore. And for instance, take the row going on about the flag right now. That row would not exist, I would say, in the US.
Well, right? I think it's, you know, we're more sensible. I mean, a lot of this is a bit silly. I mean, Trafalgar Day was 220 years ago.
But it's great
The Battle of the Boyne, which certain people in Ireland celebrate, was even older than that. And we now have to get on with the French. I don't suppose they'd mind if we celebrated it a bit more, or indeed any of the other ones. But, you know, we do have other days to celebrate our war heroes. You know, it's too nationalistic for me.
Even our war heroes, we don't really celebrate those days, do we? I know, OK, so I was born after the war. I know that will come as a surprise to you. Right, I was born...
Which one?
As you can call. I was born after the war. And I must say my father didn't want, who spent 5 years in a prison war camp, never ever spoke about what happened to him. Did not,
and that's almost universal.
He did not embrace any of these actions. And so I think our country suffers because we don't celebrate anything. It's as though everything is over there, and we don't want any big example of emotion.
We clearly celebrate being English and British in all sorts of other ways and are proud of it. And we don't need to sort of say, right, today is a certain day for this battle.
But it's quite fun. The reason I like celebrating our ancient victories...
And what do you do when you celebrate them?
It teases the French even more. And it's not really about celebrating us, it's about winding up gently our French friends.
What do you do? I mean, you ring up your French friends and say...
It's Trafalgar Day. Like the great story of de Gaulle when he wouldn't speak in whichever room it is in the Palace of Westminster, flanked by Waterloo and Trafalgar. He had to speak in Westminster Hall, whereas I noticed that the current president, when he came, quite happily spoke between the two, didn't seem to notice.
Well,
but it is quite...
Well, I just think, thank goodness for the current Macron, but because it's just, we've got to be more relaxed about these things. It could be silly going back all that time.
But I don't view it like that. I enjoyed taking part in the Manhattan Irish celebrations. I've got an Irish bone in my body, and yet I enjoyed the fact that they enjoyed it. And I wonder, all I wonder is why it is we haven't got it. Is it our natural reserve, or aren't we actually very proud of what we are?
I think it's the reverse. I think we're so confident and certain of ourselves that we let other nations boast about how great they are, and we just think, you carry on, that's all right. Because I'm going to end this section with the thing that winds the French up the most. Cool. I don't know if either of you ever touch a glass of champagne, but champagne requires the English design of glass. And until the English designed solid enough glass, the French couldn't make champagne. So, thanks to us, you get champagne, not Dom Perignon. There, you learn something new every day. Thank you very much to my panel. In a moment, new HMRC data show the top 1% now pay a third of all UK income and capital gains tax. But with high earners leaving, is Britain's tax system in dire need of reform?
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, we were discussing Trafalgar Day and the Mailmogs have sailed into sight. Paul says, what a shame we spend a month celebrating so-called Pride. We need celebrations for proper events like Trafalgar Day. And Richard says, I'm glad to have been able to visit the Victory when it was still fully rigged and had the original cannons on board. Remarkable ship. And Marcus says, it's a shame we're forgetting to teach British history to the younger generations. Well, you all have to buy Andrew Jimson's book, which I'm going to be reviewing in a day or two. As the late, great Baroness Thatcher said, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. New HMRC data reveal that the top 1% of UK taxpayers are paying a third of all income and capital gains tax, a total of £93.8 billion in the last financial year. The top 100,000 earners paid nearly £55 billion, equivalent to 1 in 5 of the pounds paid. Many are warning that this reliance on high earners is risky, as tax reforms and the abolition of non-dom status simply push wealth abroad. So how do we solve Britain's tax problems? Well, I'm joined now by the Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Andrew Griffith. Andrew, thank you very much for coming in. So today we have very bad debt figures caused by increases in wages and increases in the cost of government debt. So essentially falling on the government for decisions it's made. But that means you need more tax, doesn't it? So don't you have to raise tax? Isn't Rachel Reeves right, as your friend and colleague Mel Stride said, to increase taxation in the budget, income tax?
Well, no, the first thing that Rachel Reeves should do is put the public sector that she spent £70 billion of your and I's and British people's money on an Ozempic-style diet. And that is the only way to get out of the doom loop that we're in. You talked just then about the increasing fragility of the UK tax system with fewer and fewer people being contributors. That top 1,000th of the number of people in the UK are paying more than paying more than the lowest earning 50%. So most people are takers, not makers in the UK, which means if we're lucky enough to have these golden geese who are paying far, far more than their fair share, contributing to public services, helping Rachel Reeves keep the wool from the door a little bit longer with her incessant borrowing, then we should be very, very focused on that. And instead, you will know that many of them are leaving the UK for Italy, for the United Arab Emirates, for the United States, countries which have got a better vibe about growth as well as more competitive tax rates.
Though I noticed that Italy has just put up its tax for the people who've gone there, I think from 100,000 ultimately to 300,000 euros. So you can't rely on other countries. And Rachel,
although that's a sign of success because so many people are going there that they felt, like everything, Jacob, if there's excess demand, you can put up the price. The issue in the UK is that we've got the very opposite issue. People are fleeing our country.
But are we crying wolf? That's what Rachel Reeves said recently, that she said everyone was complaining about VAT on schools and that all the non-doms would go, and here we are and everything's going swimmingly. So she seems pretty confident that her policies are working. You don't feel that?
Well, people have to make their own view about whether they have confidence in Rachel Reeves's judgment. There's some very authoritative surveys out there that say the assumption about the number of people who would leave by the OBR, the actual number is running about double that. Of course, the Chancellor is flying blind because if you leave the country, you can't prove an omission, as it were. People simply stop paying their tax here, and it'll be some years before HMRC definitively know that they have gone. But you can see the evidence from some very high-profile people whose names are in the public domain that they say they've gone. The founder of Revolut, one of the UK's largest, most successful financial unicorns, a business that's worth many billions of pounds, has very publicly left. It's not for me to talk about other people's tax affairs, but it's very clear that some of these people are leaving. And the fragility, because your viewers may say, well, look, it doesn't really affect me. These are ultra-rich people. They can go and live wherever they want. The issue is the dependence we have in our tax system on a very small number of people. Small number of people leave. For every one that leaves, you need 50 at least, more if they're in that top 0.1%, to replace them. Or you know what? We're going to have worse public services, or as very likely, and we hear a little bit more today, everybody, your local GP, your solicitor, they're going to be targeted to spend even more taxes.
And that seems to me to be the absolutely key thing, that the numbers leaving aren't in the tens of thousands, but actually your point is the fragility of the system. There are so few people paying a very large amount of tax that if you lost the top 100, that would have a real effect on the government's spending capacity.
Correct. And look, let's be really clear. This is a wonderful country. Actually, when you ignore what the Mayor of London is doing, London is one of the world's great cities. Our universities, our education system, our culture. It's very rare you get the whole package, and London can be that. So there's nothing about talking our country down. But ultimately, if people feel the government doesn't value them, if they're discriminated against, if they can't get safe streets, so they're not getting anything back from being in London, then people have choices. The category error that people in Whitehall make is that everybody these days has got more choices than they ever had before. And if a small number of people take those choices, we're all going to be poorer. Everybody's going to be poorer. Your local health service will be poorer. Your local council, everything.
But what can we do about it? Because when taxes were cut without expenditure cuts, when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, the markets panicked, the cuts were all reversed, and the Tories took tax up to the highest level since the war. We didn't do any better. Isn't Rachel Reeves just following the pattern that we set when we were in government?
Look, there's a bit in that. There is a bit in that. And, Kemi's very clear that we're under new management. I wasn't part of those decisions at the time. Different people will have to account for the decisions that they took. And they obviously felt that the economic circumstances made that sensible. But let's be really clear. Rachel Reeves has gone way, way further than anybody ever did in the financial straits post-COVID. This government seems to take it as a virtue of attacking. They keep attacking wealth creators. It was a very vindictive move on private schools that hasn't really raised much money. There's a huge risk from attacking those who they say are the most wealthy with the broader shoulders. But really, that means everybody. Everybody's taxes are going up. And if you look at any international index, the Tax Foundation, a US benchmarking organisation this week, said that we're 32th in the world. I mean, this is the United Kingdom, the home of the Industrial Revolution, virtually the cradle of democracy. We're not even in the top 30 in terms of most competitive nations in terms of people paying tax.
All right, we've got about 10 seconds. What is the one thing you would cut to get things back into balance?
Look, the welfare reforms, it's a huge number. It's going up enormously. There are too many people on welfare who shouldn't be, and that would help us.
All right, we need cuts. That's all from me. Up next, it's the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, what's on your programme this evening?
Thank you very much, Jacob. Look, huge news. It's a very big TV exclusive for you, and it's at 10 p.m. We've got a very lengthy statement from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, on the rape gang inquiry. We're the only TV channel that she has given a statement to. That is at 10 p.m. I've got a rape gang survivor reacting to it live, and the one and only Maggie Oliver is going to be joining us at 9:30 p.m. Lots on.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's some wet and very windy weather to come later tomorrow and into Thursday, but for the time being, well, things are actually turning a little bit drier. We still have low pressure in control. It's just to the north of the UK, but it's somewhat easing, and so we're going to see a lot of the showery rain clearing away as we go through the rest of this evening, and most places turning largely dry. Not completely dry, there will still be a few showers coming into the northwest, but most places having a lot of clear weather. Because of the clear skies and the winds easing out as well, temperatures dropping a bit lower than they have done through some recent nights. Towns and cities